frame the issues that she's being that she's navigating right now as a community. Lindsay, we found this. Lindsay, could you give a little introduction into what your work is right now in design thinking?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay. I'm in the PhD program in city and regional planning at UNC-Chapel Hill, and my dissertation research looks at the use of design thinking as a more inclusive and meaningful public engagement strategy. And so I'm studying the work of the incubator here in Pontiac and learning about how they're using this approach in their mobility work. And so, yeah, I'm happy to, I'm actually going to be visiting Pontiac. I'll be there in person for parking day. And I'm happy to just, help out and support and to learn from you all.
Wonderful. What motivated you to study design thinking versus typical planning?
Yeah, so prior to coming to school, I actually worked at Rails to Trails Conservancy and did a lot of community outreach in low-income communities and communities of color in DC and New Orleans and Baltimore to help raise awareness of underutilized trails. And so I had that kind of hands-on experience with public engagement. And then later as a transportation consultant, did a lot of research for the Federal Highway Administration on kind of collaborative planning processes. And so I'm just, I have seen firsthand kind of the pitfalls of conventional community engagement practices. And I'm really interested in exploring how transportation planners can do that better and more effectively and more equitably.
Wow.
Perfect.
And with the federal dollars coming, have you been studying, have you noticed any signals that those dollars are more interested in that kind of, I keep hearing resilience and adaptation and a lot of the design thinking buzzwords. Are you noticing that, or what are the challenges and opportunities with the federal investments in infrastructure?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think, so obviously, the way a lot of funding programs are structured, they're not necessarily very conducive to, more kind of creative and agile approaches like design thinking. But you're right. I do think that those buzzwords are kind of beginning to be used and kind of thrown around in the federal space. I do know of a few pilot projects at the Federal Transit Administration, and FHWA is doing a project on kind of like re-envisioning transportation demand management approaches. And so you are beginning to see this incorporation of more innovative practices. And I think as that happens, we'll be kind of forced to rethink how the funding structures can better support these types of approaches.
Wow.
And what role do you think transportation?
We're kind of having a parking day meeting like right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
That's all right.
What kind?
The transportation side of the equation that's so important. What role do you see that being able to influence the way in which the ARPA funding may be discharged?
Yeah, I think, that's definitely an important consideration. I haven't really given much thought to that, to be honest. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jim?
Well, I do actually. The two things come to mind, and one is, of course, the transportation is always underfunded to begin with. And then, the work from home and all of that pandemic influence even reduced then the ridership and so forth and so on. And it looks as though that's going to be somewhat sustained. And I'm wondering how they're going to reach an accord there to continue to get enough funding just to continue traditional services. So I think the answer to that is somewhere lies between how we take advantage of work from home and learning from home to increase productivity at the expense of, unfortunately, transportation, which when we talk about first responders and we talk about the core of distressed cities, that's really a pain point.
Yeah, and I think another important consideration is climate adaptation and mitigation as well. And I think this is also a kind of a watershed moment to really rethink how we travel and the contributions of our travel to the climate crisis.
Yeah,
Wow,
great
yeah.
point. Great point. We're inundated with alphas and deltas here, and they aren't balancing. And unfortunately, I